The contents on this channel are for learning, insight, and introspection.
Hey YouTube, you have made your way back to Mind Your Mind with Just Justified. You saw the thumbnail, so let's jump right in. Men are more logical. Is that a myth? Let's dive in and find out. So let's start it off with a little bit of comic cartoon humor, okay? All right. So here we go. So it has a man saying men are more logical, women are emotional. And she says, you do realize that anger is an emotion? And there we have it. All right. So that was just a little bit of humor, of course. But I'm sure many people heard, right, of the statement that men are more logical, women are more emotional. And while I watch some of these men who tote that rhetoric, right, they crash out when I go on online platforms, and I'm like, okay, I don't know if I agree, with certain things. Here we go. Because if they crash out just for you not agreeing with certain talking points of theirs, then you kind of have to wonder, because, anger is also an emotion and they seem to not understand that. And yet, if they're showing that so easily, so often, and I'm not saying everyone, but I'm just saying that you do see quite a number. If you do snooze through certain platforms and everything and listen to certain talking platforms on different on different platforms, then you're like, okay, it's kind of a little interesting if you is a and you're seeing the emotionally driven reactions, then sometimes you kind of have to wonder, right? So let's check this video out.
More logical than women, they simply lack empathy in the aspect of, if a man and a woman is arguing and the woman is giving the man points on why she's feeling a certain way, and the man is giving the woman logic on why she shouldn't be feeling a certain way, and he is not understanding why she's feeling that certain way, that doesn't mean that he is more logical and she's being more emotional. That simply just means that he is lacking empathy. Okay, so there are two types of empathy, right? There is cognitive empathy and there is emotional empathy. Now, cognitive empathy is when you fundamentally understand why a person is feeling a certain way. For example, if someone's daughter died, you can logically understand why they are feeling a certain way, right? Or if you get slapped in the face and that person gets mad, you can understand why they're feeling that way, right? That's logical, right? So if your man isn't fundamentally understanding why you are feeling a certain way, that doesn't mean he's more logical. It's the opposite. That means he isn't being logical enough. Now, emotional empathy is when you are empathizing with a person because you are feeling the exact same way. For example, if someone died in a TV show, a character died, and all the other characters are crying and you start crying too, you are empathizing with them because you are feeling the exact same emotion that they are feeling, which is grief, which is loss. Because you are feeling the same way, you understand why they are feeling the same way. So the next time your man say, you are being illogical and emotional, tell him, no, you are being illogical because you cannot logically understand why I am feeling a certain emotion. Remember, emotion and logic, two different things, right? Also, empathy and logic. Empathy is not an emotion. Empathy is the understanding of emotion. Always remember that.
So what do you think about what this young man just said? He's talking about how they're actually, if you're not understanding, empathizing, you're actually not, you're actually illogical in a sense when you're not processing why someone may be feeling and try to discredit pretty much why they're feeling the way they're feeling. So you're actually quite illogical because you're not understanding why they are feeling that way, and you have no inkling, you know. He also mentioned like cognitive emotion, whereas in, sometimes you can register certain things as in, yeah, right, you're right, I can see why you're crying because this and this happened. But because it's obvious that those are the type of situations where someone will feel a type of way for. But if you are not connecting at all, or not even trying to understand what someone may actually be feeling, that is lack of empathy, and you are actually in retrospective being illogical. That's basically what this young man was pretty much trying to say in his video. So I decided though to dig deeper because I have my thoughts on it, but I was like, okay, let's see what doing a little bit more research and digging up will pull up. And here's what I dug up. So it says, when I asked the search engine, are men more logical than women, I found that stereotype was not supported. That stereotype was not supported by scientific evidence, right? It continues to say that both genders can be equally logical, and individual differences in thinking styles are far more significant than gender ones. So they're saying there's more differences in thinking styles rather than in gender, than significant ones in gender. So now there are some differences in brain structure between men and women. This is what I found, right? But they do not translate directly to one gender being more logical than the other. Perceptions of gender-based logic are often influenced by societal expectations and cultural norms. So more so because of the societal norms, and because of societal expectations and cultural norms, that's typically where the gender-based logic comes from. So in fact, science suggests the connectivity in the male brain is primarily from the emotional centers to the action centers, while in the female brain, the emotional centers are more connected to the language and higher reasoning centers. So we also need to consider, though, the differences are averages, and there is significant variations between both genders. So pretty much a toss-up in a sense sometimes, depending on different things. Like for instance, there can be environmental factors such as education and social experiences, which can influence brain development, right? It's important to avoid generalizations and stereotypes based on these differences. So there are functional differences, however. For instance, spatial abilities. Studies suggest that male brains may have an advantage in spatial tasks such as navigation and mental rotation. And when it comes to language processing, female brains may show greater activity in areas related to language processing. When it comes to emotional processing, male brains may be more sensitive to certain emotions such as aggression, while female brains may be more sensitive to empathy and social cues. That when it comes to cognitive control, female brains may have better ability to inhibit impulsive behaviors and plan ahead. So these are some functional differences, right? There are structural differences as well. When we talk about size, male brains are generally larger than female brains, about 10 to 11%. Cognitive thinking, when it comes to cognitive thinking, female brains have thicker cortices in certain areas, particularly in the prefrontal, parietal, and temporal lobes. So those are like the crevices in the brain that actually, like, the smoother the brain is, the kind of, it's not good. If your brain is smooth, you need those crevices for functioning. But so basically they say that the female brain have thicker cortices in certain areas. Then there's gray matter. It is said that male brains have a higher ratio of gray matter to white matter, while female brains have more complex connections between different regions of the brains when it comes to white matter. All right, so our culture values logic, right? Which leans more to the way men think as more valuable. So as a result of this stereotype, women can be easily labeled as too emotional. I'm sure, we've heard this. Let me put me on the big screen real quick. All right, so which sometimes that too emotional labeling in some cases equates to other labels, like, other suggestions, like being weak, hysterical, or drama queen, or whatever other word that may come from that. And then that can lead to the detriment of women, for instance, because, like, being believed when reporting a crime. Like, if you're thinking this person is hysterical or extra or being too emotional or whatever the situation is, then that may affect sometimes, oh, she's probably overdoing it. She's probably, which there are people who are, let me say that there are people who are overly emotional and everything like that with reporting, but it may tend to kind of go that way when it comes to a woman. So it also means like it kind of reduces women to a second class status in powerful jobs. Also, sometimes it may accredit less loss of self-esteem at an early age. All right, so isn't it ironic though that this is just a little sidebar, that the term, because we use the word hysterical a little bit earlier, the term hysterical derived from the Greek word hystera, meaning uterus. Ironic. It was believed that being hysterical was due to a defect in the uterus, basically meaning only women can be hysterical. That's suspicious. All right, so sometimes men using the woman that women are more sometimes with men using that they are more logical argument. Now that can lead to avoiding feelings from a very young age. Like, boys are conditioned to suppress emotions. Now, some men may think that's normal, that's okay. No, that's not okay. All right, in certain situations. Of course, regulation is best, but you still have to feel those emotions, because then sometimes that's what even turns into pent up anger and all that. But moving on. Avoidance of feelings can lead to a wide range of chronic physical symptoms and illnesses. Feelings also may emerge in the only acceptable emotion, from extreme sports to extreme violence. Less, and also they're less likely to experience deep connections with others, right? So let's think about it this way. A big part of connections are the sharing of emotions and thoughts and ideas. When a man hides behind the logical myth, he can prevent deeper connection and understanding. So communication often relies on the expression of why. Like, why did you come to that conclusion? Why do we have to do it this way? Why did you, whatever, right? Like, that comes from why. Like, why do you like coffee this way? Why? Like, that, then, that whole explanation comes with connection and understanding more, right? So communication often relies on the expression of why, which may be difficult to answer if you lock away your emotions. So after I came across these things on men being more logical and all that, and these facts and these information, this information, there are certain things that I took from it. I look at this is how I look at it. Basically, I don't put a gender to having logic or being emotional. I don't put a gender on that. I think that when you put a gender on it, that's when you kind of hinder progress. I look at it like basically, no matter what your gender is, you should strive for emotional intelligence and regulation. I believe both men and women can be either more logical or more emotional. I've seen both. So I believe that there, even whether you want to label yourself as emotional or not, or whatever the situation is, I've seen that it can go both ways in either gender, right? So it's more so how to apply and regulate the emotions. And that's more so the goal that we should strive for. I think we get off track when we assign genders to it, because then, you have this overly emotional guy that really feels more so anger, and he's not associating that as an emotion. So then he's thinking that, oh, he's riding solely on logical, and he may not be too logical as an individual. So it can go either way, because there are other on the other hand, I've seen women who are very logical in the way they think. Yes, as a human, we implement emotions at times and all that other stuff, whether excessive or not. But I feel that it's not really gender based necessarily. It just seems like a pointless argument when you see men proclaiming they are more logical than then they're having like an irrational angry outburst, and then not understand that's emotionally driven, or not realizing that understanding and experiencing emotion can still coincide with logic. And also that any big emotion can alter anyone from registering logic. So, like when you're in that big space and you're like, you're blocked from any logic anywhere. And that goes for a woman or man, so it can go either way. I believe there's a time and place for everything. There's a time where emotions and empathy are fitting. Then there's a time where logic, problem solving, and still empathy are more fitting. I've met logical men and logical women. I've met highly emotional men and highly emotional women. And I've met emotionally regulated men and emotionally regulated women. It is not gender specific. That's my opinion. I mean, what are your thoughts? Please share in the comment section below. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you see my point, if you have another idea of it. But this is what I think. This is how I feel about that. I feel like it's about regulation when it comes to emotion, but we all have, men and women have varying levels of logic, and it can go either way, high or low, depending on the person. That's where I stand. So let me know in the comment section how you feel about this topic. I would love to hear about this. This will be interesting. All right. Until next time, peace.